Palo Alto, California, 2013. Inside Theranos' cutting-edge laboratory, a volunteer provides a drop of blood for a revolutionary test on the Edison device. The company claims that with just one drop, the machine can perform dozens of tests within minutes and detect hidden illnesses. A technician walks into another room, starts the Edison, and the machine displays an error. Without wasting time, the technician takes the sample and processes it on standard lab equipment. A few minutes later, he returns to the patient with the results, claiming they were generated by the Edison. The patient smiles, unaware that they've just become part of a monumental deception. Behind this device stood a young and ambitious Elizabeth Holmes, whose dream was to revolutionize healthcare and become the next Steve Jobs. But instead of leading a revolution, she orchestrated the biggest fraud in medical history. This is the story of how one woman managed to deceive investors, doctors, and even the US government, stealing over $10 billion. 2003, a 19-year-old Stanford student, Elizabeth Holmes, drops out of university with an ambitious dream to create a device capable of performing dozens of medical tests from just a single drop of blood. She leaves Stanford, convincing her professors, friends, and parents that her invention will change the world. With her parents' approval, Elizabeth uses the money they had saved for her education as seed capital to launch her company, Theranos. She then begins pitching her vision to potential investors. Holmes paints a future where patients can receive complete diagnostic results in minutes at a fraction of the cost. Her charisma, youth, and bold ambition quickly capture attention. Holmes was also deeply inspired by Steve Jobs. She admired his style, leadership, and ability to captivate an audience. Determined to emulate her idol, Elizabeth adopted Jobs' signature black turtlenecks, posed for similarly styled photo shoots, and even lowered her voice to sound more authoritative.
Every person should have the ability to get that type of test, because if you understand that early that you're at risk, there's a lot more that you can do about it.
Founded in 2003, Theranos initially grew modestly, but within a few years, Holmes began attracting high-profile investors. She assured them that her technology would revolutionize healthcare by dramatically reducing costs and making testing accessible to everyone. Holmes even managed to gain the trust of influential figures, such as Henry Kissinger and George Shultz. They not only invested in Theranos, but also helped her secure additional funding and open doors to high-ranking government connections. Within a few years, Theranos became one of Silicon Valley's most talked-about startups, raising hundreds of millions of dollars in investments. Yet no one suspected that this revolution was built on a lie. 2013, Theranos enters a new phase. In promotional materials, Elizabeth Holmes confidently presents the Edison device as a breakthrough in medicine, a small box capable of performing dozens of blood tests from just a single drop, all within minutes. No needles, no vials, just a simple finger prick. But behind the closed doors of the lab, the truth was far from what was advertised. While the Edison looked like a futuristic marvel, inside it was a complete failure. The device couldn't handle the minimal blood volume Holmes had promised. Performing dozens of simultaneous tests required far more complex mechanisms than the compact machine could support. Furthermore, internal temperature fluctuations compromised test accuracy, and software glitches often produced random, meaningless results. Because of this, the tests frequently yielded incorrect results, sometimes even dangerously so. Patients were misdiagnosed with serious illnesses they didn't have, or critical conditions went undetected. Instead of addressing these issues, Theranos devised a deceptive solution. The tests were conducted on standard laboratory equipment, and the results were falsely presented as coming from the Edison. To conceal this fraud, the company implemented strict confidentiality measures. Theranos fostered a climate of fear among its employees and critics alike. Workers signed ironclad non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, and worked in isolated silos, often unaware of what other departments were doing. Journalists who started asking questions were threatened with lawsuits, and employees who voiced concerns faced immediate dismissal or retaliation. Meanwhile, Holmes launched an aggressive marketing campaign. Her image as a confident, successful entrepreneur who channeled the spirit of Steve Jobs became a media magnet. She even hired the same advertising agency that had worked with Jobs. Holmes appeared on the covers of Forbes and Fortune, confidently claiming her technology could save millions of lives.
We've made it possible to run comprehensive laboratory tests from a tiny sample or a few drops of blood to eliminate the tubes and tubes of blood that traditionally have to be drawn from an arm and replaced it with the nanotainer.
Theranos secured contracts with major corporations like Walgreens and Safeway to install Edison devices in their stores, allowing customers to get revolutionary diagnostic tests in minutes. However, Holmes repeatedly delayed device shipments for months. Eventually, a few malfunctioning Edisons were installed, but they failed to perform as promised. Even the US military became a client, investing significant funds. Holmes convinced the Pentagon to deploy her devices in field conditions to diagnose soldiers. Once again, the Edison failed, producing error rates as high as 146%. Despite these mounting failures, Theranos continued to attract investment. Holmes not only showcased the company's so-called successes, but also played on investors' fear of missing out on the next big thing. She assured them that her technology would become the new standard in healthcare, promising massive returns. By 2014, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Inside the company, however, tensions were rising. Engineers and scientists began to realize that Holmes' promises were unattainable. Management applied relentless pressure, and any attempt to question the Edison's effectiveness was met with hostility. One employee described the work environment as a reign of terror. Externally, Theranos appeared unshakable. Holmes continued to captivate the media with TED Talks and keynote speeches at global forums. Her words inspired, her image dazzled, and her promises seemed entirely plausible. But beneath the surface, cracks were growing. Holmes knew her technology didn't work, yet she pressed on, determined to become a symbol of medical innovation, even at the cost of patients' lives. The scheme reached its peak. Theranos was hailed as one of the most innovative companies in the world, and Holmes became the youngest self-made billionaire. But the truth about the Edison was about to come to light, and her empire was on the brink of collapse. 2015. Inside Theranos, tensions are escalating. Some employees are unable to stay silent any longer and begin seeking ways to expose the truth. Among them is Tyler Schultz, the grandson of one of the company's investors and board members, George Schultz. Tyler shares information about the falsification of test results with the Wall Street Journal journalist John Carreyrou. Carreyrou begins his investigation, gathering testimonies from employees and examining internal documents from Theranos. Later that year, he publishes an article revealing shocking facts. The Edison device never worked, and most tests were conducted using standard laboratory equipment. Worse yet, the test results were frequently inaccurate, posing serious risks to patients' health. The publication sparks a media firestorm. Regulatory agencies, including the FDA, CMS, and SEC, launch investigations. They uncover widespread fraud and numerous violations of medical standards. Theranos is found to have consistently deceived not just investors, but also doctors and patients. Meanwhile, it comes to light that Elizabeth Holmes and her business partner and romantic partner Ramesh Sunny Balwani spent a significant portion of the company's funds on a lavish lifestyle, including private jets, designer clothes, and extravagant parties. The exposure of the fraud deals a devastating blow to Theranos' reputation. Walgreens and other partners terminate their contracts. Investors, who had poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the company, began filing lawsuits to recover their losses. Among the biggest investors were the DeVos family office, which had invested $100 million, and Rupert Murdoch, who had invested $125 million. Collectively, investors lost over $900 million. Expecting multi-billion-dollar profits from Theranos' market breakthrough, they instead faced bankruptcy and the total loss of their investments. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, Elizabeth Holmes publicly accuses journalists and competitors of trying to destroy her company. She admits that the device requires more development time, but insists that the situation is under control and that the machine will soon deliver as promised. However, her words no longer hold the persuasive power they once did.
This is what happens when you work to change things, and first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world. And I have to say, I personally was shocked to see that the Journal would publish something like this when we had sent them over 1,000 pages of documentation demonstrating that the statements in their piece were false.
By 2018, Theranos is on the brink of bankruptcy. Employees are resigning en masse, funding has dried up, and partners have completely lost trust in the company. In June 2018, Theranos officially shuts down, leaving behind billions of dollars in losses and countless ruined lives. That same year, Holmes and her partner Ramesh Balwani are charged with fraud. Prosecutors allege that they knowingly misled investors and patients. Fully aware that their device did not work, they face 11 counts of fraud and conspiracy. The trial becomes one of Silicon Valley's most high-profile cases. Prosecutors present compelling evidence, including emails, internal reports, and testimonies from former employees. Holmes and Balwani deny any wrongdoing, claiming they believed in the technology and had no intent to deceive. In 2022, Elizabeth Holmes is found guilty on 4 counts of fraud and sentenced to 11 years in prison. Her partner Balwani receives a 13-year sentence. You can watch more interesting videos about financial scams and other related topics on my channel. Thank you for watching.